Hey everyone, Pushing Up Roses here, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a bit of a different type of video. Today I am just talking about stuff, as one does, and sharing some speed drawings with you guys. You've probably noticed that my uploads have stopped for the last month and a half or so, and that's because I am in a weird place, which you already know because you clicked on this video title. And don't worry, this isn't a drama or a tea video. In fact, this might be boring to listen to. I just really feel the need to express myself and reflect on some of the branching paths that my life has formed lately. The biggest thing, and yeah, maybe probably the most dramatic thing, is that after many years, I found out that I have BPD, or borderline personality disorder, which I've been struggling to come to terms with. It does explain a lot of things, like why I keep relapsing with addiction issues, why I struggle with suicide ideation way more than I'd like to admit, and maybe the biggest thing, my identity. I feel like I don't know who I am, and when I admitted that to my therapist, it led to a really candid discussion about my other symptoms. I really thought that these symptoms were all their own separate things, so I treated them separately. And that doesn't mean I didn't make any progress on things like my eating disorder or working on my depression and suicidal thoughts. I absolutely have. I am in a better place than I have been in the past, but I also felt like I was relapsing too frequently into unhealthy and toxic behavior, and I kept having trouble regulating my emotions. In terms of not understanding my identity, for me, it feels like I can acknowledge that I do stuff, like I do art, I do videos, I write, but those things aren't who I am, and I get confused. And I've been looking at my past a lot. I've been looking at photos of my childhood house and my parents and trying to figure out who I am and how I got here, and it's really hard to articulate. If you can relate to that, let me know, and let me know how you describe that feeling to other people. I want to say that I know the power a diagnosis can have. I know how freeing it can be. It's important to have one. I guess I'm just confused it took this long for me to get one. It feels like I did something wrong somehow. And I'm not ashamed of having mental issues. I try really hard to manage them. I put in the hard and super uncomfortable work into therapy, and I keep up with my job and my interests, so shame is not what I'm experiencing, just sadness that it feels like I lost years of my life not managing something I could have managed earlier. And it may not be my fault in the direct sense, but it certainly feels like it right now. I just didn't realize my symptoms were a part of something else. I had always just viewed them as separate entities caused by depression, but I also realized I was keeping a lot of my addiction and binging behaviors from my therapist, and started to hold back on discussing suicide ideation, because even though I've been in therapy for a long time, those things tend to be very secretive parts of mental illnesses. And that's not to say I never talked about them, because of course I have, just not to the extent that would fully help me. And there's the other notion where I thought I could just manage those things on my own, which I could for short periods of time before I eventually relapsed, then felt too ashamed to tell anyone. Addiction is also one of those illnesses that gets a lot of criticism. People are very polarized on it. Sometimes society can be empathetic, but a lot of the time, if the addiction is severe and it's hurting the addict's family and other people, society can be really cruel and unsympathetic. Addiction does run in my family, and it goes between drugs, alcohol, gambling, and food. My sister struggles with a gambling addiction, and it was very hard. She would lie to me without even thinking about it, asking for money for various things, but using it at the casino, and she'd get cruel and defensive when confronted. Addiction is something that changes your brain chemistry. A lot of the time, the addict loses their ability to empathize. So my sister could lie and take money really without remorse. So I understand the destructive side of addiction, and I get distancing from people with addictions who have become a toxic presence in your life. But I also don't want to give up on her because I know she's sick. I know she's not in her right mind. I remember watching a documentary on Amy Winehouse and seeing celebrities just publicly lambaste her, even though it was so obvious to anybody with a set of eyes that she was this prisoner of her own brain. And it's tough. It's tough, especially when it's within a personality disorder, which are some of the hardest to treat. There's a scene in the show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a fantastic show. I recommend it. I really got a lot from it, where the main character is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And she says something that just spears me right in the heart. And I can't recite it verbatim right now, but she basically expresses that BPD is not like a mood disorder. She feels like she herself, her personality, is broken. It's hard, and now I'm in a very contemplative place, even more so than my weird, pretentious artist self usually is. But I'll manage. I just needed some space from videos to deal with all of this stuff. That being said, the other weird place I'm in is in fact career related. And while I love writing and editing videos, especially since I pivoted my content, I've recently been wondering if that's what I'll be doing in my life in the next 5 years or so. You see, I found ceramics. You know, not that pottery is going to take over my life or anything, but it kind of has. So in January, I decided to try a wheel throwing class, because why not? I was feeling stressed and wanted to get out there and learn a new art and talk to people. I am a somewhat extroverted person and I like chatting it up, especially with other creatives, and let me just say, I have found the new love of my life, and it's clay. So wheel throwing is one of the most exceedingly difficult forms of art I've ever done, and I absolutely adore it. I loved it on the very first day of the 10-week course, and during that time I constantly went into Open Studio to practice, because when I do something, I put 200% into it. There's something very meditative about wheel throwing, and sexy! But we'll focus on the meditative part for the sake of this video. When I'm working with clay, it is absolutely impossible for me to feel depressed. It just does not happen because I'm so focused on what I'm doing that my brain doesn't think about anything else. And it just so happens that there's a lot of steps to wheel throwing, so I do need to stay focused to get them in order. So far, I've made and glazed a few things, a couple mugs, couple bowls, tried my hand at a vase and a jar. It is so fulfilling, and it has really got me back into the art world in a significant way. I've always done art. As many of you know, I sell my paintings online, and that's always gone well for me. And on my Instagram, I also post my illustrative work, so I've always loved it. I've always had a desire to create. But having a new way to express myself is so exciting! I loved it so much that I signed up for 2 more ceramics classes in the spring, another wheel throwing course, and a hand building course so I can sculpt severed heads and bones and creepy shit. And finding this love has really thrown me. Thrown me! Do you get it? Do I want to be a ceramist? Should I switch focus? Should I pour myself into being an artist? I don't know. These are mostly rhetorical questions, so feel free to not answer them in the comments. What I do know is that I have extremely irrational thoughts about buying a pottery wheel and a massive kiln that I can't set up anywhere. I've been doing a lot of different things and really exploring my life and myself. Last year, I started an OnlyFans, which I may or may not regret announcing here on YouTube. Time will tell. And that was to help combat my body dysmorphic disorder, and to be quite honest, that has given me more strength and power than anything I've done. Sometimes I post extremely unflattering photos of my face on my page, making me perhaps the only person using OF for unsexy purposes. Listen, sometimes we just have to come to peace with our back rolls and our under eye circles, I'm just saying. And I know what you're thinking. Roses, why would you do that? If you have BDD, don't you get uncomfortable? And yes, I do, but part of managing something like this illness is doing things that make you uncomfortable. In treatment, we have something called exposures, which make you face things that make you feel uncomfortable, like mirrors or cameras, because to be brutally honest, you cannot get better unless you challenge yourself. That does not mean pushing yourself over your limits. You do have to be careful with that. I am working with a therapist so that doesn't happen, but it does mean pushing yourself so that improvement can happen. It's like building muscle, right? When you work out, your muscles get sore, they hurt, they're uncomfortable, but eventually they start getting stronger with consistency. It's also a good excuse to show off my tattoos. The other avenue I've been trying out is podcasting. Me and my best friend Matt started an adventure game podcast called Save Your Game, and that's also been really fun and rewarding. Since I don't do much gaming content over here, I decided to get my love for it out in podcast form, and it's honestly been doing well. I can't believe there are thousands of people who want to listen to me talk about King's Quest V. That's amazing. And by the way, everything I mention here will be linked below if you do want to check out these other avenues. We've had some really great special guests on the show, and if you like and miss my gaming content, I really think this podcast will scratch that itch for you. We don't make any money off of it, we just love doing it and talking about weird inventory items. It's almost inspired me to get back into doing adventure game videos. You know that they've always had diminished returns for me. It's hard when you have to make money to survive, huh? Wish it wasn't like that, but when I choose content to do videos on, I really have to be smart and think about whether the topics are going to be something people are going to want to see. My very next video is likely going to be about the worst episode of Columbo, and if you can guess which one it is, I will give you a gold star in the comments. And following that, I have this idea on covering a rather obscure television special called Elephant Parts, which is a visual record made by Mike Nesmith of Monkees fame. I don't really know how well it aged at this point, but it actually won the very first Grammy for the music video category, which I think is fascinating and not something a lot of people know about. And there's just a lot of interesting things to discuss when it comes to the Monkees and Mike Nesmith. I don't know if this is a smart choice in terms of content, but I think it'll pique some people's interest. I'll just have to title it something unhinged, like, I bet you didn't know about this guy, or something. I'm really bad at titling things. I'm open to suggestions in the comments, so go crazy, throw your best titles at me. To kind of conclude this sentiment, I recently played a game called Wanderstop. It's about accepting change and challenging what society deems as being productive. The main character's life changes drastically, and she pivots into a direction she didn't see coming, similarly to how I dove into ceramics. And it really got me thinking about changing directions and whether or not it's too late to do so. I know society really likes to place emphasis on age and what you've accomplished at certain numbers. It can be especially weaponized towards women, so I think it's easy to feel deflated or like you're too old to pursue something different. Which obviously isn't true. You're never too old. In fact, my podcast co-host told me something pretty inspiring not long ago. He said that he had read that a woman close to 100 years of age was asked if she had regretted not doing anything in her life. And she said if she could do it over, she would take up violin at age 40. And that just really spoke to me. Even if she had taken it at 60, she would have been playing violin for 40 years. So if I start sculpting with clay now, maybe in 50 years, I will be a clay prodigy. My mugs will be like no other mugs, you will see. I also started a Blue Sky account. This isn't related to anything. I just felt like I should tell people that my Twitter account is kinda dead, but my Blue Sky account is hopping with pottery and cat content. How can one resist? So this video doesn't really have a solid conclusion or anything. I just wanted to get all of these ideas out of my head because frankly, they were taking up too much real estate, and I need room for mug making and King's Quest V. I hope you enjoy this speed drawing and my introspections and take something away from them, and I guarantee there will be new content coming to the channel soon. But in the meantime, check out the other things I've mentioned, and if not, that's fine. It's fine. But you'd be missing out on my Blue Sky hot takes, and that would be a tragedy. Thanks for watching and listening. Links for everything will be in the description below. And until next time, as always, stay spooky, and I will see you in the next one.